Welcome back. Down area.
Today we are talking about Excel quick tips. If you like, click the subscribe button and hit the like button. And with that said, let's crack on. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to be looking at is the recommended pivot tables. So if you have a data set just like this one here, where it's quite vast and you'd like to actually throw this into a pivot table, Excel have given us the ability to include a pivot table based on the data that we actually currently have in our data set. So what we do is we head over to the Insert tab and go to the Recommended Pivot Table option. If we give this a click, Excel has analyzed the data in our table and basically made some suggestions as to what pivot tables we might be interested in. So we have, for example, here a sum of sales by region, a sum of sales by salesperson, a sum of sales by month, and so forth, right? So we can just select the one that we want, click OK, and it will automatically create a new sheet with that pivot table. And that is quick tip number 1. Second on the list, we have quick analysis. So if you have a data set like this one just here, or this larger set here, you could highlight the set, and in the bottom right hand corner you get a quick analysis option. If you hover above there, it just gives you a brief description of what quick analysis is. If you click that option, it then gives you 5 options. You have formatting, charts, totals, tables, and sparklines. And then inside each of these, if you hover above them, it will give you a quick demonstration of what it will do to your little mini table or larger data set. And it basically allows you to have quick access to some fundamental basic analysis. So for formatting, for example, you can have the data bars, colors, icons greater than 10%, and so forth. Charts gives you the option to have all these various bars or pies and so forth, and probably one of the most useful is actually the quick sum functions. So you can actually just summarize your data table really quickly using the quick analysis, or provide averages, counts, percent of totals, and so forth. You can also convert to a table directly from this quick analysis, or include sparklines if that's what you're looking for. And for this example, I will just throw in the sum total at the bottom there. Okay, so that is tip number 2, which was quick analysis. Moving on, tip number 3 is the filter. So this is quite a basic function in Excel that majority of most people should know, but I'll cover it anyway. And that is the ability to actually include filters within your data. So if you just click into the data set that you'd like to filter, navigate over to the Data tab and click on Filter. With filters enabled, you will notice that these little drop-down menus appear above each column heading, and if you click those, you get the options to basically filter the data to the specific criteria. So if I wanted data just on Chris and on Helen, and click OK, now my database table here has just been filtered down to both Chris and Helen. Now if I wanted to look and compare their performance in December, and I could do that, and I just get for Chris and Helen for the month of December what their sales were. And a quick tip here, there's a little clear function just here, and this will actually clear all of the filters that you've applied. If you want to clear a specific filter, you can do that from here, but I generally prefer to clear all filters when I've finished using any particular data set so that it's ready for the next use. And that is tip number 3. So moving on, next on the list I have is control keys, and the control keys lets you basically move around your data set quickly. So if you hold the control key down and then use the up, down, left or right arrows, your cursor or selected cell will jump to the beginning of your data set or the end of the data set. So if I go control up, it will jump straight to the top of column B, and control down, I'll jump straight to the very bottom of my data set. Okay, so if I scroll down, you can see it's the very last record on row 97. Now if I hold control shift and up, it will highlight all of the data in that particular column, and if I hold control shift right, I'll select everything within column B because of my Control Shift up and Control Shift right. And then I could, if I wanted to, hit Control C for copying, select somewhere else, and press Control V to paste that data in. So that is the control keys, and that's our quick tip number 4. So moving on, we have quick tip number 5, which is how to adjust the column widths. And there's a few different ways you might want to do this. If you notice that this particular column here, the header is not quite visible, you can just hover between the two columns until you get a double-ended arrow, double click that, and it will expand the column to fit the particular data that's within that column. With that said, you can also select multiple columns, hover between two of them until you get the double-ended arrow, double click that, and it will adjust all of the highlighted columns to the width that will fit the data correctly. Alternatively, you can highlight the columns you would like, right click and go to column width, and then actually just give it a manual size of 10, for example. And that is our quick tip number 5. Next on the list we have flash fill and autofill. So an example of a autofill and flash fill comes down to Excel noticing patterns within the data that you're writing. So for example, if I start typing out a list of numbers where I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if I highlight these and go to the bottom corner here where I get the cross, I can now click and drag. Excel has recognized the pattern that I've entered is a continuation of the numbers, and as I drag this down, Excel will now continue the pattern that I've already laid out. And that there basically becomes our autofill or flash fill functions. The other part of this is it works for formulas, so if I wanted to set a manual formula up of saying I would like to minus 10 from each person's sales for whatever reason, and press enter. So my formula is set. I go over to the bottom right hand corner until I get the cross, double click that, and now that formula is being dragged all the way down my data set. And I can check this by going Control down, and I can see that at the bottom all of the data within this formula has now been pulled down correctly. Okay, so that is our tip number 6. Next on the list we have absolute cell referencing. So for this example we're going to look at a formula here where what we'd like to do is find out what 10% of this particular value is. Okay, so we've included a criteria just at the top here called 10%, and I'm going to set a formula that basically deducts 10% from this. Okay, so what I'm going, or should say 10% of that value. Okay, so I'm going to equals this, and I'm going to multiply it by this. Press enter. So now this is 10% of this particular value. However, if I go to the autofill and I drag that down, we can see that it stopped working. It's no longer actually providing the correct answer, and that is because we have not used absolute cell referencing to lock down the 10% criteria field, or in H1, right? So what we'll do is we head over to our formula, highlight the part of the formula that actually references our H1 or our criteria, and we hit F4. By pressing F4, it's automatically put in the dollar signs before the H and before the 1. Okay, and that's an absolute cell reference. From here, what we can do is actually there are 4 different types. If we hit F4 again, it will remove the dollar sign from the beginning of the H, but leave it with the number 1. If we press it again, it reverses that and puts the dollar in front of the H and removes it from in front of the 1. And if we press it again, it removes them all together. But for this example, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we do not change the row that we're referring or the column that we're referring. So we want an absolute cell reference with dollar signs in front of both the H and the 1. And the quick tip on that is F4. Press enter, and now we can copy that down. So F4 is for absolute cell referencing. Next on the list, we have how to transpose data. So if, for example, I have all of this data here, but instead of it in row format, I would like it in columns, I can select this data, press Ctrl+C to copy it, head over somewhere here, right-click, go down to the paste options, and find the option that says Transpose. Click Transpose, and now I have all of the names in the columns and the sales they achieved in the row directly below. This is quite a useful feature if you have large data sets that's not quite structured out the way you would like. Okay, and that's how you would transpose data. Next on the list is text to columns. So for example, if you have a text string like this, where it's separating each name by a comma, what you can do is use this, select the data that you would like, head over to the Data tab, and then go and find the text to column function. Click that and you'll open up a convert text to column wizard. We want to make sure that we have delimited selected. Click next, and then you want to make sure that whatever your delimit is, or your delimiter is, you click it on here and make sure it's selected. So for example, if I have this delimited by comma, I would click comma. However, and what I'll do is I'll actually just show an example here. If I decide to actually just do a find and replace on this specific cell, what I'd want to do is actually replace the commas with, let's say, the ampersand sign, right? And click replace. Now I have a list of names with an ampersand in between. So if I click this and go to my text to columns, delimited, click next, none of these options will delimit my text. Instead, what I need to do is actually delimit it by a special character or other, and then add in the ampersand. Okay, so now, no matter what it is that is actually in between your text strings, you can delimit it or convert the text into columns using an other option or whatever it is that is actually splitting your text up. Once you have that done, click finish, and now I have all of my names in columns. Okay, and last on the list is to include a screenshot into your Excel document. Now this particular function and quick tip actually crosses over multiple different Microsoft 365 applications and is not specific to Excel. However, it's great that you can actually include this in here as well as Outlook, Word, etc. What we do is we'll head over to our Insert tab and navigate to the Illustration section and Screenshot. From the drop down, we can see all of the open screenshots that we have, open screens that we actually have that we can grab and put into Excel, and also the option to take a screen clipping, which is basically a part of the screen that you can just grab and drop into Excel. So for this example, I'll just drop this other Excel document I have open straight into this one, and then from here you can treat it as any other image. So you can straight away crop it. So if we wanted just a section of this particular screen, we can do that from here. So this is a list of what we've been talking about today, and we can include that. Just click off, and now we have a screen clipping of our screenshot, just like that. And as I said, this particular function crosses over the other applications as well. And that is it, guys. If you found this useful, then please click the like button, hit the subscribe, and tap that bell. And we will catch you guys in the next video.